How does one get the most out of their stove?
Oh boy. There's several ways to approach that. Several facets of it. And one of the first ones I would say is to how to get the most efficiency out of your wood. You know, you're going to put in every piece of wood you put in there has a amount of energy in it. It might be, let's say, heat is adjusted by or figured in thermal units. How many thermal units does that have? BTUs. Most people understand BTUs because you got a furnace that's 20,000 BTUs. So BTUs is this British thermal mass. It's the British thermal unit. Sorry, thermal mass. So anyway, so that's one way to rate it. But what you want to do is you want to take that piece of wood. Can I get 90% of that wood or 50%? Generally, if you take a piece of, there's one thing. Oh, I didn't even think about this. There's 15 ways to do this. You take a piece of firewood. What energy is in that firewood? If that wood is really cold, that's going to affect how much energy you're going to get out of it. Because I did this one time. I put a large piece of hardwood in a stove, and my fire went out. There was so much cold stored in that piece of firewood that it absorbed enough heat out of the fire that the fire went out. Okay, so that's something you don't want to do. What I've always done typically is, this is one of the main things. There's a really good YouTube channel called Life in Farmland. Young kid, wonderful kid. I mean, just so hardworking. And he has like hundreds of cords of wood stored up because he burns wood. He might be in Minnesota, I don't know. But anyway, really good channel. But he has a video on how to make your wood, get the most efficiency out of your wood, your stove. It's a really good video. Look it up. I'll try to link it. Well, let's say I've got a stack of wood outside and it's already on the porch. That's already done. Well, no. First of all, you want to have it in a place where it'll cure, where it'll season. Because if you don't season your firewood, you're putting wet wood into the fireplace, and you can get two little probes on them, and it's a meter for testing your dampness of the wood, the moisture meter. Yeah. So you stick that in there, and you can get, generally it might be 25% or something, but you want to get it down to like 17% before you put it in the stove. Number one. So you want to have it cured, seasoned for 6 months. Sometimes wood takes 2 years to season. If you see wood that's really all dark looking, that's well seasoned. If it's bright, and clean looking, that's not seasoned. It's new wood. And if you have a piece of firewood, there's no cracking in it, that's green wood. It's not seasoned at all. Don't put it in the fireplace. And then the other wood is seasoned will have cracks and they call it checking cracks. Because it dries out, it starts splitting, and that's a lot easier to split then because you just hit those cracks and it's faster and easier to split. So you have your firewood, you let it season, and then that's all split. You're going to split it before you stack it to season it. Okay, so they're already split and they're already cracking and they're drying out. So then at that point you want to get it up near the house. Let's say it's seasoned and split and seasoned. You're going to put it up by the house. Now I never take a piece of wood outside and put it in the stove. You want to take that wood about a load at a time. Whatever, I usually use a banana boxes. That's a good thing. That's about a day's worth of wood for a lot of people. Take that in the house and put it by the stove. Sometimes I put it on the stove, and so it'll dry out and warm up. You want it as warm as possible to put it in before you put it in the stove. So that's very critical. If you put like I said, you put a cold piece of wood in the stove, you're wasting. You're taking X number of BTU from your fire to warm that piece of wood up to the point where it'll even burn. And like I said, I have put wood in the stove and it wouldn't even get out. One time we had a big piece of hickory. We were in Kansas, and we put it in the stove, and it would not. I never did get light up. I had to take it out. Even though we had a fire going, it would not light. It was too big, too dense, too green. Probably I didn't know anything about wood at that time. I had to pull it out of the stove and put something else in. So seasoning is critical. Warming it up, pre-warming it is critical. Next thing is you want to have as highest burn efficiency as possible. In other words, you want to have a hot fire. You want to have a good bed of coals. And one thing you got to learn is that you want to get a fire going, a top lit updraft fire, TLUD. Get that going. You get down. You get a bed of coals. And that's something I learned in Kansas first year. Get a good bed of coals there, and then you can put wood on it. You can add wood to it, and it'll burn. If you do not have a bed of coals before you go to bed at night, a lot of people they'll burn wood all day long. They let the fire go down, put in a piece of wood, and then you got to start all over from scratch. If you don't have a bed of coals, you're not going to burn wood through the night. You're not going to be able to burn it. But if you have a bed of coals, so you get all that room, they're down at the bottom, and you have all this space in there. You can put a bunch of wood in there, and it will burn. If you have a good draft and everything, we'll go into that in a minute. So That's that you have to have that to have high efficiency. Is a good bed of coals, and that comes by using good seasoned wood and let it burn down. And there's a lot of things you can do with that, like how as far as efficiency of a stove, how many ways can you use it? Can you use it as a heating system? Yeah, you can use it as a heat. Did you put a heat exchanger on it? Yes. Can you store heat in a heat storage? Store the heat in some way? Yeah, you can do that. Another thing you can do with it is you can have an oven on top of it. You can put a little oven on top of the stove. You can have there's make ovens that run off the flue gases. That's for high efficient. The stove that we sold in 1999, Y2K, in the oven you could put 7 loaves of bread in the oven and bake them. 7 loaves of bread. That's pretty impressive. Anyway, so what else can you do? You can cook in it. Can you cook on top of it? Yeah, you can cook on top of it. If you have a good flat top, you can do you put a pot of water and you can have tea, coffee, stew, chili. You can have cook beans on it. But one of the things I just did a bunch of this all myself. I had a rack, a stainless steel rack, and then I had a ceramic rack from Walmart that I'd slide in there, and it worked like a shelf. So when I got a bed of coals, I could put the first rack in there and the other rack on top of it, and I could take a nice big steak and put it in there and just grill that steak in there just like you're outdoors on a grill. It was so cool. I loved it. So I could be heating the house up and then have a steak, cooking. As far as you want to use the heat, not just have it go up in the air and just go where it goes. Okay, so you want to direct the heat. Like if you have a big room, you want to blow the heat into the room, right? How do you do that? We can have a fan near the stove, a fan behind the stove, but they make little devices. I should have it in here, darn it. Little devices that work off a thermovoltaic, where you have a photovoltaic is taking the sunlight and turning it into electricity. Well, these take heat and turn it into electricity. They have a little flat plate that sit on the stove, and then there's the conversion unit in between. We call it a solar panel, a thermal panel in between, and then on top it's got fins like a radiator, but it radiates it. So it's cooler at the top, warmer at the bottom, and that creates electricity, and that runs a fan. You get really nice ones. So that's one way to move heat. You want to make it more efficient. You want to use as much of the heat as possible. You want to get as much heat as possible, and you want to use as much heat as possible. One of the most awesome, ingenious things I've ever seen in my life. I don't know who thought this up, who figured this one out, and I hacked it. Or what I call hacking, I cracked the code on it, right? So in other words, I saw a device that they're selling for $30. I saw that and I went, that's a brilliant idea. If it does what they say it'll do, this thing they said would reduce your pot chances of creosote fire by either 57% or 97%. I don't know. And there's a university study proved it. Reduce creosote fire by a massive amount. A huge percentage. It would increase your burn percentage. It would burn more of your wood, spread the heat more evenly. So I saw what it was. It was like a stainless steel mesh. It looked like steel wool. Looked like steel wool. And it wasn't a very big piece. It was just about this big. And they sold you this piece of steel wool. You're supposed to put it on your bottom of your. This could be in a fireplace just a regular fire like you guys have at your house, or a stove or anything, and it would increase the efficiency of it. So I thought, well, that $30, that's kind of weird, So I got on eBay and I found a big piece of stainless steel screen, like a door screen, stainless steel. And I got that thing and I bent it and cut it, and then I had a cylinder stove, so it was like 28. I told you this before, 28 by 18 wide by 13 deep. So I bent it, so it was. I'll just do it here. I made 2 bends on each side. Can you see that? So it went down at an angle and then across the flat. The flat's about 8 inches across at the grill, or not the grill, the grate, and then back up and then it's vertical. So it's kind of a U-shaped. I put that in there, and I'm here to tell you what. I had been burning the stove for quite a while by the time, and every day I had a banana box of wood. That's what I burned in a day. And I had about 10. That's another thing. I had 10 of those in the trailer. It's a little airstream trailer, but I had 10 of those in there because I wanted them seasoned and warm. I wanted them dried out and seasoned, and as warm as possible. So I had to bring them up to room temperature before I put it in, at least, if not on top of the stove, and cook them up to about 100, 200 degrees before I put them in. But anyway, so I had that going on. I knew exactly how many boxes of wood I would burn, and how often I had to clean the ashes out, the coals out, the ashes. And I had already done this. I'd already had a thing where I knew that I kept seeing that the more of those coals, this is one of the most efficient things you can do if you're not doing it. If you have a grate and it's dropping, if you see that there's coals, if your grate is this big in between the holes, and the coal gets that, when it burns down to a coal and it drops down to the ashes, you've lost the heat. Whatever money you spent drilling that coal is gone. You've wasted it. It still has some heat in there, but you're not putting it up in the room at all. It's buried down in the coal. It's getting, it's insulated now, basically. Okay, so it's not putting out too much heat, not into the rest of the fire. Now, if you pulled the grate out, you could put some wood in there and get it started again. But my point is this: that I knew how many days I went before I had it, and it's about 3 days I had to clean out I had a thing where I just brainstorm everything, but I had one of these scissor tongs, so you can pick up a piece of firewood. I had that, so I would put that. I would get the thing opened up, and I would lift the grate up with it, and clamp it down. I hold it with this hand. I could clean it out while it was burning. I never put the fire out to clean it, to clean those ashes out and the coals out that's down in there. So I started noticing those big coals don't do any good. They're not giving me any heat. So I put another piece of grate on top of that one. And one time I pulled the grates out. I counted them. I had 7 different grates in it with 7 different kind of sizes of holes. So I was getting pretty efficient with that. None of my coals not too many of my coals are going on the fire. Well, by the time I did this thing, the screen, I put that in there, like I made 4 bends there, and 2 on each side, and I put it in there, and it fit perfectly. It was a cylinder stove, so it was the grate across the bottom is like about 8 inches wide, so it went down, down, over, up, up. Okay, so I put that in there, and I'm here to tell you, I walked by that thing, I could feel the heat. It was like it felt hot, before, because it was cold. It was really cold that winter, but I could sense the difference in it. When I walked by, it was just that much warmer, so much warmer. So then I said I'd been about a box a week, about a box a day, banana box a day, and every 3 days, so every 3 banana boxes I had to clean it out. Well, it still was burning good and still burning good and still burning good and still burning good. 15 days went by. I got to clean this thing out, check it at least. There were no ash down below the grates, and the stainless steel screen was getting where it was pretty clogged up. It was getting kind of packed in. But near as I could determine is it was burning so much wood that it was going up out the stack. All the little ashes and things were going out the stack because they weren't in the stove, that's for sure. So it was very impressive to me. I can advise somebody if you're interested in that. I can advise you on, or I can tell you. I got a whole bunch of it. I got a whole roll of it. Have to just give me the dimensions on the stove. I can make you one. So I'm not trying to make money or sell anything, but support the channel or do something. Anyway, we'll worry about that later. Okay, so, and that's kind of a catalytic. That's kind of what's catalytic converter. What that screen does, what they said in the Fire Miser. The company was look up Fire Miser. They're still online. They still sell them apparently. They haven't been knocked out to the point where they have to go out of business. They said number one, it keeps the heat very even because stainless steel conducts heat very well. So anyway, stainless steel screen. You get the heat here, but it'll transfer that heat out here, so it burns more evenly, and just does a lot better job. So there's something like increase your burn efficiency by 30%. So you put $100 into wood, they're getting $130 out of it, or $150 out of that. See the amount of money, whatever. Because everybody said, well, burning wood's free. No, it isn't. It's not free at all. Chainsaw, oil, gas, wear and tear on your vehicle, wear and tear on your tractor or whatever you're pulling it in with, truck, wear and tear on your body, and you can't last forever doing that. Another thing that helps okay, I told you want to move the heat into the house, and you want to be safe too. So here's a thing that does both of those. If you have your stove here, and you have to X number of inches between that and the wall. But one way you can help that situation is you have the wall. Let's say your wall is here, and your stove is here. Back of your stove. So here's your stove. Okay, so between the wall and the stove, you put up a piece of wood, or it could be metal. Metal's great, better. But something that is not going to touch the floor. Let's say here's the floor. So you put 1 inch from the floor. You put something against the wall, and you have it about 1 inch out from the wall. So even if this was wood and something flammable, it's not going to ignite because it's going to suck in cold air and draw it up here and come out the top. And if you have it at the top and that is a piece of metal and you just do a curve in it, it's going to shoot it out. You know, if this is metal, against the wall, if you had a piece of metal, it would shoot it out. Okay, so you got airflow, and you got something when it hits, it comes out of the top of the piece of wood or the metal between the stove and this, and you have something to point it at that way. It's going to curve out and go that way, and it's going to blow out into the room. So that's another very not only a safety thing, not only an efficiency thing, but also a safety thing. Hot air rises, so what happens is you have your piece that's against the wall is put out from the wall by like some little blocks or something, so it's an inch or two out from the wall. So it's going to suck holes in the bottom, warm up as it's coming up, and then get shot out into the room. Okay. And another way to do that is this guy had his wood stove damper, or the pipe coming off his stove. He had an elbow and it came over 6-inch pipe, right? And then he had it into a T of an 8-inch pipe. So it came up through the 8-inch pipe. And it had a T there, and so one part of the T went down to the ground, the other one up here, and the one that came in. So there's your T, right? So this went to the stove, and then this one went down to the ground, and this one went up out the house. So by doing that, he had the 5 inside the 8-inch, or 6 inside the 8-inch. So it heated up the air in the 8-inch pipe. And what happened was it was sucking air, and he showed he had a piece of paper and it would suck it and just slap it right up against the thing, sucking air so fast. And they did a thermometer down there, it was like 70 degrees down there, and up here it was 110 degrees, 120 degrees coming out of the pipe. And he had it, elbow there, so it shot out into the room. That was just brilliant. I mean, this guy has some, I don't remember the name of the channel, but it had some really ingenious stuff. That's a heat exchanger, basically. You want to exchange the heat. You can do that with just one of the stoves I have is but it had a little box sitting on top. It would come up. It would come up out of the thing that had a baffle, would come over and then go back and out and up. So that's a heat exchanger sit on top of the stove. And the outfit of the oven on top of the stove is a heat, all doubles as a heat. It's not even an oven, but it's a heat exchanger because it radiates heat out into the room. So heat exchangers work good. Like you'll see, you see 55 gallon drum kits that they're made of two. You get one with one barrel, put a door on it, and got a hole in it for the damper or the stovepipe, and light it up. And then they make kits with it's for 2 barrels where it comes. Wood goes on this side, and then it comes into goes back to that end of the stove, and then it comes out, goes into the other stove, and then goes back around and then up and out. So there's all kinds of ways to get more heat out of the stove, be more efficient. And another way to increase the amount of heat you get out of the stove is to store it. A lot of people, you put a big pot, crock pot, or big we call it a stock pot, stainless steel pot or something on the top of the stove, and that's going to heat the water up. Water is very good at absorbing, retaining, and radiating heat. I mean, it's really good. It's like 5 times better than most other things you can get. I always assumed that meant, because I read that one time, so it walked in my head, 5 times better than anything else. Well, it's not 5 times better than sand, or not 5 times better than cob. Yeah, storing the heat, in sand. So you can put bricks on top of your stove, put bricks around your stove. Anything that will absorb that heat and radiate out. Fire bricks are great for that. Normal brick would be good. Just stack them around there. The more heat you can, the more thermal mass, the more mass you can have around your stove, the better you're going to be. We want to call it heat storage or thermal mass. That's what you want to have, is more of it, as much on top of it and around the stove as possible. Because it'll radiate out. Let me talk a little bit about what they call the masonry fireplace, whether it's ceramic or brick or whatever. But the masonry fireplace, you have an open firebox. Well, you have a fireplace. I'm going to just sketch this. We're going to have a single line. You're going to have, stovepipe or chambers in your brick or your whatever brick or your okay. So here's your stove, and then you have your pipe or your chambers in your blocks. Your ceramic blocks are going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. What they're doing is they're heating up the whole thing, and then it goes up and out. So by the time it gets out of the house, there's virtually no smoke at all, and there's very little heat. The heat's reduced quite a bit because the heat is transferred into the um, thermal mass, the weight of the blocks in the brick or whatever it is. So that's high efficiency.